scars are carved into your bones. Some betrayals come when you least expect them. The day my husband Mark brought a glamorous woman into our home, he walked right past me to his mother and said, "Mom, this is Lily. She's the woman I'm going to marry." My mother-in-law Carol, the woman who had spent a lifetime looking down on my small-town roots, crinkled her face into a wide smile. She grasped the other woman's hand and cooed, "Oh, what a dear girl." The three of them were a happy family, and I was just an inconvenient piece of furniture. A piece of trash about to be thrown out. The air, thick with the stench of betrayal and humiliation, was suffocating me. I stood there like a clown, but I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Because I knew in that instant my life needed a new direction. Revenge is a dish best served cold. They had no idea what kind of storm was brewing behind the quiet facade of the pushover they'd been stomping on, and I would be the one to detonate it. My name is Ella. I'd been married to Mark for 5 years. To outsiders, I must have won the lottery to marry a so-called city elite like him. Mark's family was from Chicago, born and bred. His parents were retired city administrators, owned their suburban home outright, and carried themselves with an air of superiority among their neighbors. I, on the other hand, came from a small town hundreds of miles away in the Midwest. My parents were honest, hard-working farmers. Our marriage, doomed from the start, in their eyes became the beginning of my 5-year nightmare. I still remember the first time I met my mother-in-law Carol. Her critical eyes scanned me from head to toe like an X-ray, finally landing on my shoes, a little dusty from the long bus ride. The corner of her mouth twitched. That contemptuous little scoff is something I'll never forget. "Our Mark has never had to struggle a day in his life," she told me, her voice dripping with condescension. "A country girl like you should know her place. You'd better take good care of him." It wasn't advice. It was a warning. Back then I was naive enough to believe that if I just tried hard enough, if I was good enough, I could win her over. After we got married, I quit a perfectly good job at her suggestion. "Why does a woman need to be so ambitious?" Carol had said. "Taking care of the home is your real job," Mark had chimed in. "That's just how my mom is. Just bear with her. I'll make the money. What's wrong with you enjoying a comfortable life at home?" I believed him. And so, I became the family's unpaid housekeeper. I'd wake up at 5:30 a.m. every day to prepare 3 different breakfasts. Carol needed her fresh-pressed green juice, no pulp. My father-in-law wanted his eggs over easy with perfectly crisp bacon. And Mark would only drink coffee from a specific local roaster brewed in a French press. After they finished, they'd wipe their mouths and head off to work or their morning walks. My day of cleaning laundry and grocery shopping would begin. My debit card was handed over to Carol on the second day of our marriage, under the guise of, "Young people are terrible with money. I'll help you to save." Every month, she'd give me a few $100s for groceries, as if she were feeding a stray, always interrogating me about every penny spent. "Wow, steak is this expensive now. Did the butcher rip you off? You small-town girls are so gullible. Why did you only buy organic strawberries? Are you hiding cash for yourself?" All my clothes were years out of date. Once I saw a simple sundress online for $100. I hesitated for days but didn't dare buy it. I knew the hurricane that would erupt if Carol found out. Spendthrift Mark works his fingers to the bone, and all you do is doll yourself up. Who are you trying to impress? And Mark, he always had the same line. "My mom means well. Don't hold it against her." In that house I had less status than Carol's pampered little poodle. At least when the dog made a mess, she'd coo and comfort it. No matter what I did, it was wrong. If the food was too salty, I was trying to give her a heart attack. If it was too bland, I was being cheap with the salt. When guests came over, I'd work until my back ached. The moment they left, her face would fall. "Look at you, so awkward and unsophisticated. You're an embarrassment." Once I had a fever of 102. Lying in bed, I couldn't even stand. Carol yelled from the doorway, "Stop playing dead. Everyone gets a headache now and then. The family is waiting for you to cook dinner." I dragged my weak body out of bed, made them a 3-course meal, and collapsed before I could even get a glass of water for myself. I lived like that for 5 years. 5 years. Over 1800 days and nights, enough time to grind a vibrant young woman full of life into a silent, hollow-eyed ghost. It's not that I didn't fight back. Once I broke down and told Mark I couldn't take it anymore. He held me and promised he'd talk to his mom. The moment he stepped into her room, I heard her shrill voice. "Mark, so you've chosen your wife over your mother. What has that little witch done to you? We worked so hard to raise you just so you could be a slave to some country girl." Mark came out looking defeated and annoyed. "Can't you just give me a break? My mom's getting old. Can't you just let her have her way?" That was the moment my heart turned to ice. Lately, Mark had been coming home later and later smelling of a perfume that wasn't mine. He stopped touching me, always using work stress as an excuse to sleep in the guest room. I'm not an idiot. I sensed something was crumbling, but I didn't dare confront it. I was afraid. Afraid that the only thing keeping me in this city, this family, would shatter into dust. I was an ostrich with its head in the sand, desperately pretending this marriage wasn't already dead. Until the day Mark made it official. It was a Saturday afternoon. Carol had specifically called and told me to go to Whole Foods to buy fresh Maine lobster and prime ribeye steaks, saying we had an important guest coming for dinner. I walked in, loaded down with grocery bags, and saw her. The woman sitting on my sofa, her hand held affectionately by my mother-in-law. Her name was Lily. She was beautiful with perfect makeup and designer clothes that made my apron-clad, fish-smelling self look like a speck of dust. When she saw me, there wasn't a hint of awkwardness in her eyes, only the triumphant glint of a victor. Mark stood beside her, his face filled with a tenderness I had never seen. In that instant, I understood everything. When Carol saw me, her face twisted into a familiar sneer. "Oh, you're finally back. Dawdling as usual. You reek of fish. Get to the kitchen and deal with that stuff before you offend our guest." Her guest looked at me as if I were the hired help. I was frozen. The blood in my veins felt like it had turned to ice. Mark finally spoke, his voice devoid of guilt, only cold finality. "Ella, we need to talk." He pulled me out onto the deck and slid the glass door shut, blocking out the fake laughter from the living room. "You saw Lily. She's a wonderful woman. Good family, very successful. We're in love." And my voice was as dry as sandpaper. "So we're getting a divorce." He stared out at the yard as if he were discussing the weather. "This house is in my parents' name, so you won't get a cent. For old time's sake, I can give you $50,000 as a settlement. $50,000. For 5 years of my youth. 5 years of servitude. 5 years of humiliation." My heart felt like it was being sawed apart by a dull knife, the pain so intense I could barely breathe. I looked at him, the man I had loved for so many years, and he was a complete stranger. "Mark, where is your conscience?" It took all my strength to ask. He finally turned to look at me, his eyes filled with impatience and contempt. "Ella, be realistic. Look at yourself. You're a washed-up housewife with no job and no savings. Without me, you can't even survive in this city. 50,000 is more than generous. Lily is different. Her father is a senior executive at a major corporation. She can help me. She can help our family live a better life. What can you do? Besides housework, you're just dragging me down." Every word was a poisoned arrow, aimed perfectly at my most vulnerable spots. He was right. I was a fool. I had given up everything for this family only to become a worthless burden in his eyes. Suddenly I wanted to laugh. Laugh at my own stupidity, at the cruelty of reality. I took a deep breath, swallowing the bitterness in my throat, and looked him straight in the eye. "Fine. We can get a divorce. But I don't want a single penny of your money." Mark was stunned. He clearly hadn't expected me to agree so easily. I ignored him, turned, and slid open the deck door. In the living room, Carol was happily serving fruit to Lily, as if Lily were her own daughter. "Lily dear, try these cherries. They're imported, so sweet. Not like some people who can't even tell good from bad," she said, shooting a pointed glance my way. Lily smiled, picked one up, and popped it elegantly into her mouth, her eyes locking with mine in a look of pure triumph. I walked over my face, a mask of calm, and took off my apron, dropping it on the floor. "Mom," I said evenly, "since Mark is bringing her home, I won't be staying in this house anymore." Carol froze for a second, then shrieked. "What's that supposed to mean? Are you trying to threaten us?" "Let me tell you, Ella, we've been wanting to kick a jinx like you out for years. If you leave on your own, you're saving us the trouble." Mark followed me in, immediately shielding Lily as if I were going to attack her. "Ella, don't make a scene. Just pack your things and go." I looked at their faces, and the last shred of affection I had for this family evaporated. Without another word, I went back to the room I had lived in for 5 years, but had never felt an ounce of warmth. I didn't have much. A few old clothes, a couple of books. It all fit in one suitcase. As I dragged my suitcase to the door, the three of them watched me as if I were part of a circus act. Lily even had the audacity to say in a saccharine voice, "Ella, don't be impulsive. We can talk this through." The gloating in her tone was unmistakable. I stopped at the doorway and turned back, my gaze sweeping coldly over each of them. "Mark. And you too," I said, my voice quiet but clear. "I, Ella, will remember how you treated me today. I hope you don't live to regret it." Carol scoffed. "Regret it? We couldn't be happier. Now get out." I opened the door and walked out. It slammed shut behind me, sealing off my past. Walking through the tree-lined suburban street, the evening breeze felt cold against my face. I didn't cry. Not a single tear. When your heart dies, the tears dry up. There was only one thought in my mind: I will repay this humiliation 100 times over. I pulled out my phone and found a number I hadn't contacted in years. It belonged to an upperclassman from college, a man whose advances I had once turned down. He'd gone on to start his own tech company and become the most dazzling success story of our graduating class. I had always seen him as someone to be admired from afar. In the years since, my own insecurities and failures had made me too ashamed to ever reach out. But now, I had nothing left to lose. He had once sponsored a scholarship I received in college. With it came a promise. "Ella," he'd said, "if you ever run into a problem you can't solve, you can call me." The phone connected. "Hello," a calm, magnetic male voice. My heart skipped a beat. "Alex, it's me. Ella." There was a pause on the other end. Alex seemed surprised. "Ella? It's been a long time. What made you call?" His voice was still warm but with a polite distance. It made sense. We hadn't spoken in almost 6 years. After graduation, I had buried myself in my marriage, cutting off ties with almost everyone from my past, especially him. I was ashamed of my life, a mouse hiding in a dark corner, too embarrassed to face the people who shone so brightly in the sun. "Alex, my voice cracked. "I'm in some trouble. I need your help. Take it easy. Tell me what happened." His voice through the phone had a calming effect. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I squatted on the sidewalk and like a lost child told him everything. The 5 years of misery, the scene that had just unfolded, sobbing uncontrollably. I don't know how long I spoke. By the end, my throat was raw. Alex listened patiently, never interrupting. When my crying subsided, he finally spoke, his voice laced with a barely concealed anger. "The Miller family, from the Oakwood Hills subdivision in Naperville." "Yes." I was surprised. "How did he know?" "Heh," a cold laugh. "What a coincidence." "Alex, you know them." "Know them." Alex's voice was like ice. "Ella, where are you right now? I'm coming to get you." I gave him my location. 30 minutes later, a black Lincoln Navigator pulled up. The window rolled down, revealing Alex's face more mature and handsome than I remembered. He was in a perfectly tailored suit, his features sharp, exuding a quiet confidence that was a world away from the greasy, pathetic Mark. "Get in." He opened the passenger door for me. I stood there awkwardly with my suitcase. He naturally took it from me, placed it in the back, and said, "First, let's get you settled somewhere. Get something to eat. We can figure out the rest later." He took me to a 5-star hotel downtown and got me a suite. Standing in the spacious, brightly lit room, looking out at the glittering city skyline, I felt like I was in a dream. Just an hour ago, I was the humiliated housewife. Now I was here. Alex ordered room service. Soon a delicious meal arrived. "Eat something, you look pale." He handed me the silverware. I was starving. I hadn't eaten since the afternoon, and the emotional trauma had drained me. I buried my head in the food, but tears started falling into my bowl again. "I'm sorry, Alex, for letting you see me like this." "You have nothing to be sorry for," Alex said, handing me a napkin. His eyes held a flicker of pain. "I'm the one who should be sorry. If I had been more persistent back then, maybe you wouldn't have suffered all this." I shook my head. "It's not your fault. I was blind." After dinner, Alex poured me a glass of warm water and sat on the sofa across from me, his expression serious. "Ella, what I'm about to tell you might be shocking, but please stay calm." I nodded. He took out his phone, pulled up a photo, and handed it to me. In the picture, a smiling woman was holding a man's arm intimately. The woman was unmistakably Lily from my house, and the man beside her was Alex. My mind went blank. I stared at him in disbelief. What is this?" "Lily," Alex said, his tone flat but his eyes swirling with complex emotions, "is my wife. Legally, at least." I felt like I'd been struck by lightning. The world had to be this small. My husband's mistress was my savior's wife. This was the kind of convoluted plot you wouldn't even see in a soap opera. "We've been married for 3 years. A marriage of convenience between our families," Alex explained, seeing my shock. I was focused on my business and didn't pay her much attention. "A year ago, she started making excuses to stay out all night, spending company money lavishly. I thought she was just immature, so I looked the other way. 6 months ago, I discovered she was secretly transferring assets. I had someone investigate and found out she was keeping a boy toy on the side. That man is your husband, Mark. His words were like a series of bombs exploding in my head. So the successful high-class woman Mark was so proud of was nothing more than an adulterous gold digger siphoning money from her own husband's family. And my mother-in-law Carol, who thought she'd hit the jackpot, had been played for a complete fool. The irony was staggering. Why would she choose Mark? I asked, confused. Because Mark is greedy and stupid, Alex said bluntly. Lily painted him a picture of a glamorous life, told him her connections could make him rich. A man like Mark, all ambition and no substance, would naturally fall for it. Lily used him not just for excitement, but as a tool to move my money. She convinced him to use your marital assets and even money from his parents to invest in her so-called projects. In reality, all that money went straight into her pocket. A cold chill ran down my spine. I remembered something. About 3 months ago, my mother-in-law was suddenly in a fantastic mood, a complete change from her usual stinginess. I overheard her and Mark whispering in his room. "Son, are you sure that project Lily mentioned is reliable? That's our entire retirement fund. Mom, don't worry. Would Lily lie to me? She said the return is 30%. Once we make this money, we'll buy a bigger house and kick that washed-up housewife out." At the time, I just felt heartbroken. Now I realize their investment was long gone. So, my mother-in-law's retirement savings, gone. Every last cent, Alex confirmed, shattering any last illusions. I suddenly found it all horribly funny. My sharp, calculating mother-in-law, who looked down on me for being from the country and pushed her son to marry up, ended up being scammed out of her life savings by a far more skilled con artist. If this wasn't karma, I don't know what was. "Alex, what are you going to do?" I looked at him. Alex's eyes grew sharp and cold. "I was going to let her off easy for the sake of our families, but now that she's dragged you into this and humiliated you, she's crossed a line. Don't expect me to be merciful." He looked at me, his gaze serious. "Ella, I need your help. We're going to put on a show of our own, and we're going to take back everything they owe us with interest. Do you dare?" I looked into his deep eyes, which reflected my own battered but defiant image. I thought of Carol's cruel face, Mark's heartless expression, and Lily's triumphant smirk. Why should they get away with it? Why should I be the one trampled underfoot while they lived their happy lives built on deceit? No, I wasn't going to take it. The weak, submissive Ella was gone. The moment I walked out that door, she died. The woman standing here now was a phoenix ready to rise from the ashes. I lifted my head, meeting his gaze. The fear and tears in my eyes were replaced by a steely resolve I'd never felt before. "I dare. Tell me what I need to do." A small approving smile touched Alex's lips. "Good," he said. "Step 1, you're going back to that house." What I was stunned. "You have to hit rock bottom to be reborn," Alex said, his eyes like the deep sea. "Go back and pretend you're completely broken. Act remorseful, even subservient to Lily. Make them lower their guard. That's the only way you'll get the crucial evidence. Step 2, I'll give you some money. Use it to transform yourself inside and out. From this day forward, you are no longer a housewife chained to a kitchen. You'll learn about finance, about law, about everything that can make you strong. You will become someone they could never dream of reaching. Step 3, and this is the most important part." He paused, a playful glint in his eye. "At the perfect moment, I will appear in a way they never expect. And you, Ella, will be the leading lady of this spectacular show." Listening to his plan, my dormant heart began to beat wildly, not with fear but with excitement. I could already picture their shocked, regretful, and desperate faces when the truth came out. "Okay." I nodded firmly. "I'll do it." That night, Alex and I talked for hours. Like a master strategist, he laid out every step. I was to be the sharpest weapon in his arsenal, aimed directly at the enemy's heart. The next morning, I returned to my so-called home looking utterly defeated. Carol opened the door. She was surprised to see me, then she crossed her arms, her face a mask of scorn. "What are you doing back here? Weren't you so full of pride, couldn't make it on your own, so you came crawling back?" I kept my head down. "Mom, I was wrong," I whispered, my voice trembling with feigned desperation. "I was just upset yesterday. Please don't kick me out. I don't know how I'll survive without this family." I made sure I looked exhausted, with dark circles under my eyes, and a vacant stare, the perfect picture of a woman broken by reality. Carol, who always responded better to submission than defiance, bought it completely. Seeing me so humbled fed her ego. She looked me up and down, her expression softening slightly into one of superior pity. So you finally see sense. A little late for that. Though her words were harsh, she stepped aside to let me in. Mark and Lily were on the sofa eating breakfast. They were acting intimately. Lily was even wearing one of Mark's button-down shirts, her long, bare legs crossed provocatively. When he saw me, Mark frowned. "What are you doing here again? I told you to get out." Lily just watched a smirk playing on her lips, enjoying the show. I ignored Mark and walked straight to Carol. Then I dropped to my knees. The move stunned everyone in the room. "Mom," I grabbed her legs, tears streaming down my face. The performance was so convincing I almost believed it myself. "I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have talked back to you or argued with Mark. Please just forgive me this once. I'll do anything you say. I'll be your servant. Just please don't make me leave." Carol's vanity was immensely satisfied. She cleared her throat and patted my head like I was a dog. All right, stop all this crying. It's good that you know your place." She paused, glancing at Lily. "But things are different now. You need to ask Lily if she's willing to let you stay." The old witch. She wanted me to humiliate myself in front of the other woman. I bit back a cold smile and crawled on my knees over to Lily. "Lily, no, Miss Evans," I said, looking up at her with tear-filled eyes. "It was my fault. I was selfishly holding on to Mark. Please find it in your heart to forgive me. Ask Carol and Mark to let me stay. I can be the housekeeper. I'll do all the work. I just need a place to stay and something to eat." Lily clearly hadn't expected this. The smugness on her face was impossible to hide. She crossed her legs, looking down at me like a queen surveying her conquest. "Oh, Ella, what are you doing? Get up." She said the words but made no move to help me. "Well, I'm not a monster. Since you've put it that way, I can't just throw you out on the street." She looked at Mark and Carol, feigning generosity. "Aunt Carol, Mark, let's just let Ella stay. We have plenty of room and it would be nice to have someone to cook and clean." Listen to her. She was already the lady of the house. Carol beamed. "Oh, our Lily is just so kind-hearted. Fine, it's settled. Ella, you can move into the storage room. You're responsible for all the housework. I'll still give you $500 a month for pocket money." "Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Miss Evans." I kowtowed gratefully before getting up and standing meekly to the side. Mark looked on with a complicated expression but said nothing. In his mind, allowing his ex-wife to stay on as a servant was an act of supreme charity. He probably thought I truly couldn't live without him. And so, in the most humiliating way possible, I moved back in. I became the family's official servant. I moved out of the master bedroom and into the tiny, damp 5x5 storage room in the basement, sleeping on a small cot surrounded by junk. My days were spent waiting on the three of them, plus Lily. Lily had fully moved in, sharing the master bedroom with Mark, using my old vanity, wearing my... No, she had thrown out all my cheap clothes and replaced them with her own designer labels. She found creative new ways to torment me daily. "Ella, there's a single hair on the floor. Are you blind? Mop it again. Ella, this coffee is scalding. Are you trying to burn me? Make another cup. Ella, this silk dress is hand wash only. If you ruin it, can you even afford to replace it?" Carol was even worse, using me as her personal punching bag and a way to show off. "Oh, look how lucky our Lily is. The moment she moves in, she has a servant waiting on her. Not like some people born to be maids." She'd say this while cracking sunflower seeds and gesturing at me. Mark completely ignored me. In his eyes, I was no longer a person, just a breathing appliance. I endured it all. I kept my head down, worked silently, never saying an extra word or giving an extra glance. I let them believe they had completely broken me, turned me into a mindless, spineless drone. But they didn't know that when the house fell silent at night, when I closed the door to my tiny storage room, my real life began. Alex had given me a debit card with $50,000 on it. Seed money, he'd said. "The money isn't the issue. What matters is turning it into a weapon for your comeback." I bought a used laptop. Every night after they were all asleep, I'd put on headphones and study like a woman possessed. I enrolled in online finance courses, starting with the basics of stock charts. I audited law school lectures from top universities, memorizing sections of family law and contract law. I followed fashion bloggers, learning about style, makeup, and how to carry myself with confidence. By day, I was the grimy, downtrodden housekeeper. By night, I was a phoenix, gathering strength from the ocean of knowledge, preparing for my rebirth. The stark contrast was a sick, empowering thrill. At the same time, I was secretly gathering evidence. Alex gave me a tiny recording device the size of a button, which I sewed into my apron. Carol's verbal abuse, Lily's taunts, Mark's cold indifference, it was all recorded. I also managed to install a pinhole camera in a corner of the study where Mark and Lily discussed their investments. Soon I had recordings of their conversations. "Honey, I've invested your mom's $300 0 inches that new green energy startup. Don't worry, you'll see the returns next month," came Lily's syrupy voice. "You're amazing, Lily. By the way, I got another $200 000 from my dad. Can you invest that for me too?" Mark's fawning reply. "Of course, baby. Leave it all to me. Once we're rich, we'll buy a private island and live like royalty. We'll never have to look at that miserable Ella again." Listening to the recordings made my blood run cold. Mark hadn't just scammed his mother out of her retirement, he'd taken his father's life savings too. What a filial son. And I sent every bit of it straight to Alex. Things were progressing on Alex's end too. Using his connections, he quickly uncovered all the details of the shell corporation Lily was using to launder the money. An invisible net was closing in, and the prey, still blissfully acting out their happy family charade, had no idea. A month passed. On the outside I was still the meek Ella. Inside I was forged from steel. The day of Carol's 60th birthday arrived. She decided to throw a huge party at the house, inviting all their friends and relatives to show off her brilliant and beautiful future daughter-in-law. And of course to publicly humiliate her clingy ex-daughter-in-law, ensuring I'd give up for good. On the day of the party, I was up at 5 a.m., single-handedly preparing a feast for over 20 people. The living room buzzed with guests. Carol, dressed in a brand new dress, glowed as she accepted everyone's birthday wishes. Lily stood by her side like the lady of the house, charming and poised. She was especially dressed up, a massive diamond necklace glittering under the lights, drawing envious sighs from the relatives. "Oh, Carol, you're so lucky. Such a beautiful and capable daughter-in-law. Yes, look at Lily's elegance. You can tell she comes from a good family." Carol was grinning from ear to ear. "Oh, you're too kind. Our Lily is just so sensible. Not like some people. Useless baggage." Her eyes darted towards the kitchen. I walked out carrying a large platter of steamed sea bass. Every eye in the room turned to me. I was wearing my drab old clothes, a stained apron, my hair a mess, my face etched with exhaustion. Compared to the radiant Lily, I was a shadow. The relatives started whispering. "Isn't that Mark's wife? What happened to her? You haven't heard Mark's divorcing her. He has a new woman, that Lily. She couldn't hold on to her man, so now she's staying as the maid. 'Tis how pathetic." The words were like needles, but I didn't hang my head in shame as they expected. I calmly placed the fish on the table and said to Carol, "Mom, the food is all ready." Carol nodded, satisfied. "Good. You've been working all day. Go eat some leftovers in the kitchen. There's no seat for you at this table." It was blatant humiliation. Just then Lily spoke up. "Oh, Aunt Carol, don't say that." She walked over and linked her arm through mine, her voice sickly sweet. "Ella worked so hard. Of course she should join us. We can add a chair for her right next to me." As she spoke, she leaned in and whispered in my ear, her voice dripping with venom. "How does it feel, watching me and Mark so in love, being celebrated by everyone? Does it feel like your heart is being ripped out? Don't worry, the best is yet to come." I looked up at her triumphant face. And I smiled. Great. My reaction clearly surprised her. She had expected anger, jealousy, shame, not this calm, almost eerie smile. Shaking it off, she pushed me into a small stool they had squeezed between chairs. It was lower than the table, forcing me to sit hunched over like a servant waiting for scraps. Carol cleared her throat, stood up and raised her glass. "Today is my 60th birthday. Thank you all for coming to celebrate with this old lady," she announced, beaming. "And on this happy occasion I have some wonderful news to share." All eyes were on her. She took Lily's hand and held it up high as if showcasing a priceless trophy. "This is the future lady of our house, Lily Evans. She and my son Mark are getting engaged next month. As for a certain person who refuses to leave," her gaze shot towards me like a dagger, "our family will soon be sweeping her out like the trash she is." A smattering of applause and congratulations filled the room. Mark stood up proudly, wrapped his arm around Lily's waist, and gave her a kiss, drawing cheers from the crowd. Lily, like a triumphant princess, soaked it all in. She leaned down and whispered to me again, "Did you hear that I'm getting engaged to Mark next month? And you'll be kicked out like a dog. You've lost Ella. You've lost everything." I looked at the glittering diamonds on her neck, bought with stolen money. I looked at the happy smile on Mark's face, built on my pain. I looked at the smug expression on Carol's face, paid for with her own foolishness. My hands hidden under the table, clenched into tight fists, my nails digging into my palms. But my face remained calm, a slight smile on my lips. I looked up, meeting Lily's taunting gaze, and spoke loud enough for those nearby to hear. Is that so? Well, congratulations to you all. My tone was so placid it was unnerving. I ignored their stares and continued, but since it's such a lively party with all our friends and family here, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce someone too. My words silenced the room. Everyone looked at me, ready for the drama. Carol frowned. Ella, what tricks are you trying to pull now? This is my birthday. If you dare cause a scene, I'll make you regret it. Mark glared at me. Ella, don't push your luck. I smiled and glanced at my phone. Right on time. I stood up, scanned the room, and announced, he's a very important friend of mine. I think you'll all be very interested to meet him. With that, I clapped my hands softly towards the front door. Ding dong. The doorbell rang perfectly on cue. Every head swiveled towards the entrance. Who is it? Carol muttered, annoyed. I'll get it. I walked towards the door with a calm, deliberate pace, each step landing on their thudding heartbeats. A flash of unease crossed Lily's face. She sensed something was wrong but couldn't place it. I grasped the doorknob, took a deep breath, and pulled the door open. A man stood on the threshold. He was tall and imposing, dressed in an expensive, custom-tailored charcoal suit. His hair was perfectly styled, his features handsome, his presence radiating a powerful aura that instantly dwarfed the cheap glamour in the room. It was Alex. Behind him stood two other men in black suits, looking like his security detail. Everyone stared, speechless. They had never seen anything like this outside of a movie. Carol and Mark were frozen, their mouths agape. But Lily, the moment she saw who it was, all the color drained from her face. Her pupils contracted in terror, and she began to tremble uncontrollably. The wine glass in her hand slipped, shattering on the floor. I stepped aside, smiled at the stunned audience, and made the introduction. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Mr. Alex Sterling, my business partner. Then I turned to the pale, terrified Lily, my voice dripping with faux innocence. Oh, Lily, what's wrong? You look so pale. Do you know Mr. Sterling? Every eye zeroed in on Lily. Her lips trembled, her eyes filled with a desperate fear. In a voice barely louder than a whisper, she choked out a single word. Husband. Boom. The word was a depth charge exploding in the quiet living room. Everyone was stunned. Husband. This powerful, intimidating man was Lily's husband. Then what was Mark? The golden goose Carol was so proud of was a married woman, an adulteress. In an instant, the expressions on the faces in the room became a priceless collage of shock, disgust, disbelief, and schadenfreude. Carol's face went from red to purple to ashen white. She staggered, nearly collapsing, before a relative caught her. Mark was thunderstruck, rooted to the spot. He stared at Lily, then at the man who outclassed him in every conceivable way, his mind completely short-circuiting. Lily, is it true? He stammered. Lily had completely fallen apart. She slumped in her chair, her face gray, unable to speak. As the director of this little play, I simply stood by and savored every delicious moment. Alex's face was unreadable. He strode into the room, his leather shoes clicking on the hardwood floor, each step a hammer blow to the Millers' hearts. He stopped in front of Lily, looking down at her with cold, empty eyes. Hello, darling. It's been a while. His voice was quiet but carried a chilling pressure. You seem to be enjoying yourself here. He glanced at the gaudy necklace around her neck, a scornful smile playing on his lips. Using my money to keep your lover in your lover's house. You've got some nerve, Lily. No, Alex, it's not what you think. Let me explain. Lily finally found her voice, scrambling to grab his suit jacket, but he sidestepped her with disgust. Explain, Alex sneered. Explain how you used a fake investment scheme to defraud this gentleman and his mother of their $500,000 retirement fund. Or explain how you embezzled over $3 million from my company through shell corporations. One of his assistants stepped forward and handed him a folder. Alex slammed it onto the dining table. This contains every single one of your wire transfers, every hotel receipt from your trysts with Mr. Miller here, and all the evidence of your fraudulent contracts. Lily, you're facing charges for embezzlement and felony fraud. The amount is substantial. I've already called the police. They should be here any minute. At the mention of the police, the last trace of color vanished from Lily's face. She slid from her chair and crumpled to the floor in a heap. Carol's eyes rolled back in her head, and she fainted, collapsing onto the sofa. The room erupted into chaos. Amid the pandemonium, Mark stared at the mess at Lily on the floor, at the damning documents on the table. He finally understood. He had been the world's biggest fool. He'd been played, lost his family's life savings, and worshipped the con artist like a goddess, throwing away his actual wife for her. He whipped his head around to look at me. His eyes were a chaotic mix of shock, regret, and a desperate plea. I just met his gaze with a cold, triumphant smile. The show was just getting started. Just then my phone rang. I answered it and put it on speaker. A calm, professional voice came through. "Miss Collins, this is Sarah from your attorney's office. Regarding your divorce proceedings against Mr. Mark Miller and the division of assets, we have all the documentation prepared." The lawyer's crisp voice cut through the chaos, every word a sledgehammer blow to Mark's heart. His face turned paler than a ghost's. "We have collected sufficient evidence to prove Mr. Miller's infidelity and gross misconduct during the marriage," Sarah continued, her voice echoing through the room. "Furthermore, Mr. Miller and his mother, Carol Miller, illegally transferred and dissipated a significant amount of marital assets without your knowledge. According to state law, we are confident we can not only ensure the at-fault party, Mr. Miller, leaves the marriage with nothing, but we will also pursue the full recovery of all misappropriated assets plus damages for emotional distress. Additionally, regarding the 5 years of verbal and psychological abuse you endured from your mother-in-law, we have compiled the evidence and are prepared to file a separate civil suit at your discretion." Every sentence was a sharp knife twisting in Mark's gut. Leave with nothing, recover assets, sue his mom. His mind went blank. He staggered backward, looking at me as if he'd never seen me before. The meek, timid, helpless Ella, who couldn't survive without him. How had she become this terrifying stranger? "No, it's not possible," he mumbled. "Ella, you're bluffing, right?" I hung up the phone and looked at him, my eyes completely void of warmth. "Bluffing, Mark? Do you really think I need to bluff at this point?" I walked towards him, my presence commanding, my posture confident. These past weeks had transformed me. With Alex's help, I had not only studied finance and law but also taken classes on poise and presentation. I had lost the stress weight, learned to apply subtle professional makeup, and was now wearing a chic, tailored pantsuit. Standing before him now, I was calm, powerful, and in control. He was a disheveled, pathetic wreck. Our roles had been completely satisfyingly reversed. "You thought I couldn't live without you," I let out a short, contemptuous laugh. "Mark, you give yourself way too much credit, and you underestimated me far too much. For 5 years I swallowed my pride, not because I was weak but because I held on to one last shred of hope for you, for this family. But you, all of you, smashed it to pieces. You brought your mistress into my home. Your mother humiliated me at every turn. You treated me like garbage to be thrown away. Did it ever occur to you that even a rabbit will bite when it's cornered?" I pointed at Lily on the floor, then at the unconscious Carol on the sofa. "For a woman like that, you scammed your parents out of their life savings. Are you proud of yourself? To please her, you kicked me out of my own home. Do you feel like a big man now, Mark? You're not just stupid. You're pathetic and cruel." My every word was a slap across his face. He stood there taking the verbal lashing, unable to utter a single word in his defense. His eyes were filled with a terrible, dawning regret. "Ella, I was wrong. I was so wrong," he whispered, reaching for me. "Please, let's not get a divorce. We can start over. I'll treat you right, I swear." "Ha." I stepped back in disgust. "Start over? Aren't you nauseated saying that, Mark? When you offered me $50,000 to get lost, did you want to start over? When you, your mother, and that woman ganged up on me, treating me like a slave, did you want to treat me right? Now that your gold digger is exposed and your family is broke, you remember me. It's too late." My voice was as cold and final as a death sentence. Just then the wail of sirens grew louder. 2 police officers walked in, took one look at the scene, and walked directly to Lily. "Lily Evans, we have a report you're involved in felony fraud and embezzlement. Please come with us to the station." Lily completely broke down, screaming and struggling, but it was useless. They cuffed her and dragged her away. As she passed me, she shot me a look of pure hatred. "Ella, you bitch, I'll get you for this." I just watched her silent. Why argue with someone whose life was already over? The police took Lily, and an ambulance arrived for Carol. Mark followed the paramedics out in a daze. A lively birthday party had ended in a disastrous, humiliating spectacle. The relatives had already scattered like rats, their parting glances at me filled with a newfound fear and awe. The house was finally quiet. It was just me and Alex. "Thank you, Alex," I said sincerely. "Without him, my revenge would never have been this swift or this complete." Alex looked at me with admiration in his eyes. This was our victory. You did brilliantly. Better than I ever imagined. What are your plans now? He asked. Win the divorce. Get back what's mine. And start my new life. My gaze was firm and bright. I would never depend on anyone again. I would build the life I wanted with my own 2 hands. Alex smiled, a warm, genuine smile. If you need anything, just ask. I will, I nodded. But I'll be paying you a consultant's fee. He laughed. Deal. The scandal quickly became the talk of their social circle. The Miller family was a laughingstock. Carol woke up in the hospital, and upon learning her life savings were gone, she had a stroke. She was left paralyzed on one side, her speech slurred. Mark not only had to care for his invalid mother but also face collection agencies and being fired from his job. It turned out some of the money he'd invested was embezzled from his company. When the truth came out, he lost his job and was saddled with enormous debt. Everything he had been so proud of vanished overnight. He started calling and texting me frantically, begging for forgiveness, pleading with me to drop the lawsuit. Ella, for the 5 years we were married, please let me go. My mom is already like this. What more do you want? How can you be so heartless? Just come back and I'll give you anything. You can control all the finances. I looked at the messages and could only laugh. If he'd had this clarity before, none of this would have happened. I didn't reply to a single one. I just blocked his number. The divorce case, with my excellent lawyer, was a walk in the park. In court, I presented irrefutable evidence of Mark's adultery and the recordings of Carol's long-term abuse. Mark couldn't afford a decent lawyer and crumbled under cross-examination. The judge ruled in my favor. Since Mark was the at-fault party, the vast majority of our assets were awarded to me. The down payment on the house had come from my parents, making it my premarital property. The court ordered the Millers to repay me for all the mortgage payments I had made over the years. I not only got back what was mine, but was also awarded a substantial sum for emotional damages. Walking out of the courthouse that day, the sun was shining. I looked up at the blue sky and took a long, deep breath. I was free. On the day I received the final judgment, I went to an office building, not a hospital. I was there for my own new employee orientation. With Alex's recommendation and the financial knowledge I had crammed, I had successfully landed a job as an assistant investment advisor at one of the city's top brokerage firms. It was an entry-level position, but for someone who had been out of the workforce for 5 years, it was a dream start. I walked into the gleaming skyscraper in a new suit, my head held high. My new life had begun. My work was demanding but fulfilling. I absorbed information like a dry sponge. My hard work paid off. Within 6 months, I had distinguished myself by crafting a brilliant investment strategy for a major client, earning the firm a huge profit. I was promoted to a full-fledged investment advisor, leading my own team. I had used my own abilities to silence all the gossip and prove my worth. With the money from the settlement, I rented a beautifully furnished apartment near my office. I bought myself nice things, beautiful clothes, and started living for myself. I also bought my parents a comfortable condo downtown and brought them to the city to live with me so they could enjoy their retirement. Seeing the pride in their eyes was the greatest reward of all. One day, I got an unexpected visit at work. It was Mark's sister, Jessica. She looked haggard and pleaded with me. Ella, please, I'm begging you. My mom is paralyzed, my brother's lost his job and is in massive debt. Our house is being foreclosed on. Please help us. I looked at her coolly. When your family was ganging up on me, where were you, Jessica? You enjoyed the comfortable life my servitude provided. Now that your family is in trouble, you remember me. Go back and tell your brother and your mother to leave me alone. We are done. A few days later, Mark ambushed me outside my office building. He was a mess, unshaven, desperate, reeking of cheap booze. Ella, please give me another chance, he begged. When I refused, he snapped, his face twisting with rage. This is all your fault. You and that bastard you found. You ruined my life. He lunged at me. Before I could even scream, a tall figure stepped in front of me. It was Alex. He grabbed Mark's wrist with crushing force. I'll warn you once. Alex's voice was dangerously low. Stay away from her. Or I'll make sure your current pathetic life looks like a paradise. He shoved Mark, who scrambled away in terror. From that day on, Alex had his driver take me to and from work every day. He started inviting me out to dinner, to movies, to art exhibits. He never pushed, never rushed, but slowly and gently he became a part of my life. He was the warm sun that melted the last of the ice around my heart. One evening, walking by the river, he stopped and looked at me. Ella, the past is over. The people who hurt you have paid the price. Isn't it time to start looking forward? I looked into his eyes full of hope and affection. And I knew I was ready. I nodded. The joy that exploded in his eyes was blinding. He pulled me into a fierce hug. Leaning against his chest, hearing his strong, steady heartbeat, a smile spread across my face. This is what happiness felt like. A year later, on a beautiful evening on a mountaintop overlooking the city lights, Alex got down on one knee. "Ella," he said, his voice thick with emotion, holding out a diamond ring. "I know the last marriage left deep scars. But please give me the chance to spend the rest of my life healing them. Marry me." Tears streamed down my face, tears of joy. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes." Our wedding was beautiful. My parents wept with happiness. Alex promised them he would cherish me for the rest of our lives. And he did. He supported my career, celebrated my successes, and loved me unconditionally. A year later, we had a son. Holding my baby in my arms, watching my husband look at us with pure adoration, I felt a profound sense of peace. The betrayal that had almost destroyed me had in the end led me here. It had forced me to find a strength I never knew I had. Sometimes I'd hear scraps of news about the Millers. Mark ended up in a dead-end, low-wage job, permanently crippled by debt and bitterness, forced to care for his invalid mother in a tiny, squalid apartment. They say they fight constantly. Their story is a cautionary tale told in their old neighborhood. A story of greed, cruelty, and karma. But their life is no longer my concern. I have my own story now. One sunny afternoon, I was at the park with my son. Alex called, "Hey honey, what do you want for dinner tonight? I'll pick it up on my way home." "Anything you choose is fine," I said, smiling. "Okay. See you and our little guys soon." I hung up and watched my son toddling after a butterfly, his happy gurgles filling the air. I looked at the blue sky, the warm sun on my face, and a deep, contented smile settled on my lips. I had finally found my way home.